Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again I'm coming to you with another range report, or really a range report product review, because this is another dedicated suppressor review. And the silencer or suppressor that we will be taking to the range and testing is the HUXWRX OSS, or Operator Suppressor Systems Helix HX-QD-556K. So this is their shorter 556 suppressor. It has a QD mounting system, and being of the Helix family of suppressors, this does not use a traditional baffle system, but instead has a core that is spiral that is supposed to push the gases out the front of the suppressor instead of back into the firearm and eventually into your face. And I have reviewed a few other HUXWRX suppressors and in general have been very pleased with their performance. Now, when it comes to my suppressor reviews, I typically do them a little bit different than other reviewers. For the most part, the only metric people seem to care about when it comes to suppressors is decibel reduction. Well, I don't have the equipment to measure that, but I argue that almost every modern suppressor today is hearing safe. But as civilians, there are other things that we should take into consideration when it comes to silencers, such as its tone. Does it have a high pitch or a low pitch? Because that can really change how we perceive its performing. Are they heat resilient? Do they change the point of impact or the ballistics of the projectiles in any way? Are these easy to clean and maintain? Because many times when it comes to a suppressor, these are lifetime investments. There's not really a market for used suppressors, and with all the paperwork that we have to fill out and paying the tax to transfer them, you typically hold on to them for your whole life. So you want to know, are these easy to clean and maintain? Also, because this is that Helix design, is it really a flow-through can? Is it low resistance? I want to test all these things out. Some of these I can test through quantitative means. I can get out a chronograph. Some of these, I'm just going to have to share with you my personal opinions and experiences. So let's go ahead and adjust the camera. Let's get some close-ups and talk about the specs of this suppressor. We're going to try to clean it, and then we're going to take it to the range and test it out. So let me go ahead and adjust the camera, and let's start this review. So let's start off by talking about the specs of this HUXWRX HX-QD-556K. It has an overall length of 5.9 inches, a diameter of 1.62 inches. It weighs 15.3 ounces. It is full auto rated with no minimum barrel length restrictions. It is made of 17.4 stainless steel and grade 5 titanium. It has a QD attachment system. It is finished in a C-Series Cerakote, and they recommend cleaning it every 2,500 rounds. And this one is not user serviceable like some of the other HUXWRX suppressors. And they say in the manual you can run this through an ultrasonic cleaner. So that's the first thing I want to test, because there is a myth out there that you can't run suppressors through ultrasonic cleaners without damaging them. That is partially true if there is any aluminum in it. However, this one does not have that, so it should be just fine. And I also want to show that when it comes to Cerakote, ultrasonic cleaners do not hurt it. So let's go ahead and get out the ultrasonic cleaner. Let's run this through a cycle and see how easy this suppressor is to clean. And so the only thing that I recommend before putting this into the ultrasonic cleaner is when you put it into the tray or basket, make sure you try to tilt it up so you get all of the air out of the core or the baffles of the suppressor. So we'll go ahead and put it in here. And I did put a little bit of gun cleaning solution into the water. So I'll put the suppressor in there and I'll try to get as much of the air out as I can. And there it is. I do have the heater on, and we're going to run this for 30 minutes, and we're going to see what we get out of it. And it looks like we're done, so let's go ahead and open this up, see what we get. And that water is definitely a lot darker than it was when we started this. Let's bring out the suppressor. Let's turn it over. Hopefully drain as much water from it as possible. And it's probably going to be pretty warm because I had the heater on. So let's go ahead and set this aside. Let me wipe it down and see how clean we got it. So I have the suppressor all dried out and wiped down. It's looking good. You can see into the QD mount, everything is shiny. Any scratches you see on this were there before I put it into the sonic cleaner. This has been a well-loved and used suppressor, and that Cerakote is holding up pretty darn good. So even though this suppressor is not user serviceable, meaning you can take it apart, if you do put it into a sonic cleaner, I think it is pretty darn effective, and I think that will help the longevity of the suppressor. All right, so now let's go to the range and see how this suppressor performs. The first thing I want to test is the tone. Is it a high pitch, a low pitch, and do I think it is hearing safe? So let's go to the range, see what my thoughts and opinions are with this, and hopefully the microphone on the camera will pick it up well. So let's go to the range and try it out. And that result was kind of interesting, but honestly very expected. But before we talk more about that, there are two people I want to give a huge shout out to. First and foremost is the owner of this suppressor who lent it to the channel, and not only did he donate his time for this review, he also filled out the paperwork allowing me to borrow it and film all of this. He's a local fan and subscriber named Jack. So Jack, thank you again so much. And I also want to give a huge shout out to my friend Mark, who is the owner of a grip company called BrownWorks. He is my main channel sponsor. BrownWorks is a custom grip company making a wide variety of grips for a wide variety of firearms out of a wide variety of exotic woods and materials. He can put on custom logos, custom engravings. He can finish these grips in a wide variety of colors. He can make his own laminate woods. And you guys hear me talk about his grips in every range report. And I cannot tell you how impressed I am with the things he can create. So I'm going to put a link to his website in the comment section below, as well as a coupon code for 10% off your first order. I'm going to ask you guys to go over there and check out everything he has to offer. And when you place your order for your first set of custom grips, please tell Mark the Texas Gun Vault sent you. So now let's talk more about this suppressor and how it performed at the range. The first thing I want to tell you is that the rifle I chose for this review is a 16-inch barreled AR-15. I think that's going to be a pretty standard rifle that most people are going to have in various configurations. Now, the tone of this suppressor was a little bit on the high side, and I was expecting that because the internal volume of this suppressor is small. Anytime you have a K suppressor or a short suppressor, you're going to have this trade-off. You're going to lose decibel reduction, you're going to get a higher pitch, but you are going to get a more compact package. It's always going to be a trade-off, and it just depends on what you think is important to you. So the pitch was a little bit high. It wasn't annoying, but it was noticeable. I definitely do think, though, this suppressor is hearing safe. The other thing I was very happy to see is we had almost no flash coming out of the end of this suppressor. Sometimes with these low resistance cans, you do get a little bit of that, but I did not see that or experience it. So when it comes to its tone, just a little bit on the high side, but it definitely is hearing safe. All right, so the next test I want to do is actually see how much resistance this can has. So I'm going to put pretty much a whole magazine through this in pretty quick succession, and I want to test and see how much gas I'm getting back through the bolt carrier and back into my face. I just generally know what that feels like on many other suppressors, and hopefully with this low resistance suppressor, I'm not going to get a lot of it. So let's go back to the range and test that out. So what did I experience? Was this a low resistance can? Well, I did get a little bit of gas back in my face, although my eyes were not burning. I have reviewed a few other of these HUXWRX cans, and they work pretty good and as advertised. But this one definitely has a little bit more resistance than the others. Maybe it's because of its smaller size. I'm not 100% sure. It definitely works, but this one doesn't work as well as the others. All right, so the next test I want to do is see if this suppressor causes any point of impact shift. Now, I'm only going to test this at 25 yards, but even if I get the slightest difference, you can extrapolate that, meaning it's going to be bigger at further distances. So here we go. Let's go back to the range. Let's see if the suppressor changes the point of impact at all. So what did I discover? Well, this silencer is pretty much performing just like all of the other HUXWRX suppressors I have recently reviewed. When I attach it to a firearm, they shoot just a little bit lower. At CQB distances, I don't think it's going to be enough to make any difference whatsoever. But I think if you go out to 100 yards or 200 yards, that drop would be big enough that you would need to adjust your optic if you're going between suppressed and unsuppressed. So now the next test I want to do is check and see if this suppressor is changing the ballistics of these projectiles. Sometimes suppressors do and sometimes they don't, and I think a lot of that has to do with the baffle design and the length of the suppressor. So let's go back to the range and see how this suppressor changes anything about these 223 projectiles.
$29.42. $28.92. 92. 29, 22. 29.85. 29.06. 29.41. 29.50. 30.05. 29.14. 29.20.
And that was a very interesting result. Out of all of the 556 suppressors I have reviewed to date, I have never had one that pretty much was this consistent between being suppressed and unsuppressed. The standard deviation and the spread were almost identical. So I am impressed with that. And then if you put that with the very little point of impact shift, the performance of the suppressor is pretty impressive when it comes to how it's going to change how the gun shoots and how it's going to hit the target. So I have to give it a lot of credit for that. All right, so the last test I want to do is check this suppressor's heat resiliency. Now it is made of stainless steel and my personal favorite material, titanium. Titanium is very light and it also dissipates heat pretty quick. However, I have personally discovered that these flow-through cans typically retain the heat more, and I think it has to do with the size and the design of the core. So I'm curious how this suppressor is going to perform. So we're going to go back to the range. I'm going to do a very quick mag dump through it, see how hot I can get the suppressor, and then I will measure it 5 minutes later as well to see how much heat has dissipated. And what did we discover from this test? Well, this suppressor does get really hot, between 400 and 500 degrees. And many suppressors that I have reviewed that are primarily made of stainless steel get to this temperature range. But often, after about 5 or 6 minutes, that temperature will drop to below 200 degrees. And we did not experience that with this silencer. And I think a lot of that has to do with the design of the core. It's kind of big and bulky and it just retains that heat. Now, why is this important? One of the things that can destroy a silencer over time is the heat. If it gets too hot too often, it begins to have problems. It wears out the baffles. But also there is a safety factor. If you're out in the field and you're shooting or you're hunting and you have this rifle on a sling, you want to make sure it has dissipated that heat so you don't burn yourself. And I think this is an important metric for some people, especially if you're going to use it in the field for an application, as I mentioned, like hunting. So, what are my final thoughts on the HUXWRX HELIX HX-QD-556K? Well, it works well for a compact suppressor, but I think there's quite a few downsides to it. But it does seem to be well built and durable. Its pitch is a little bit high, but I do like the fact it is made of stainless steel and titanium. But in my personal opinion, if you're looking at one of these low resistance cans from HUXWRX, you might want to go with the full size. I think you get a better sound. I think it just performs better. It dissipates the heat better. But I do like the fact, even though this one is not user serviceable, it does clean up pretty nice in the ultrasonic cleaner. But in my personal opinion, I would go with the larger model. But if you like the small suppressors, this one seems to work just fine. So on my star system, how would I rate the HUXWRX HELIX HX-QD-556K? Well, I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 stars. It's not the best performing suppressor I have reviewed, but it definitely is nice. It definitely works. It is lower resistance. I wouldn't say it is completely no resistance, but overall it performs well. Its pitch is a little bit high, but that's just going to be a trade-off because of its size. So what do you guys think? Do you like suppressors that are bigger and work a little bit better, or do you like the ones that are smaller and more compact? And what has been your experiences with both types of silencers? Let me know in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.